Hey, what's happening, everybody? Robert Phoenix here. What's going on? Good morning. It is 9:03 Central Standard Time, all the way from Fredericksburg. Let me check in on YouTube. So we got two waiting. Morning, y'all. There we go. We're coming in for a landing. Getting all psyched up here. Still have not resolved my image issue. I don't know what's going on. It's one of those lovely technological treats that we get to deal with as an independent producer of content. Just gotta wait for a little while for people to show up, come on through that front door, grab a seat. There's plenty of room. Plenty of room. Speaking of room, looks like I gotta make room for the boss. Here he comes. Come on up. Here he comes. There he is. Right on demand, on command, Jasper. What's going on, Jay? How you doing, buddy? Yeah, you got a lot to say today, huh? There's Raven. Hi, Raven. And Paulette, Lisa Marie. Hi, Lisa Marie. Matt Z. What's happening? There's Sticky. I ate a clock once. It was time consuming, especially when I went back for seconds. Oh, that's funny, Diana. Hey, Marie. What's happening? Donna. Hi, Donna. Yes, Jasper has joined the show. On demand, on command. We had our little meet and greet over on the other side. So I think we're getting there. We are getting there. Tomorrow, hopefully, I should have Marina Darkstar on the show. There he is. You see him? There's the beast himself, Jasper. He's back in action. Ready, willing, and able. Hi, Ani. There's Butterfly Life. Hey, what's going on, Butterfly Life? Anna. Good morning, Joni. There's Joe Dimitri and Justice. And Judy. Hi, Judy. Yeah. It's kind of tough to talk through a tale, isn't it? Jasper, do you have anything you want to say to your loving and adoring fans today before we move on to the bulk of our program? Is there anything you want to share? Anything you want to bring to their attention? Huh? Anything you want to just let loose on? Get off your chest? Are you good? I think he's good. All right, so why don't I just start jumping into things here today? Well, you've seen the title of the show, which is Trump feeling his Mars transit in his first house. That's what that was about. Apparently, some radio host said that Trump is the most important person in Israel currently, and I would not deny that. He's made Israel great again. He has been right at the tip of the spear for MEGA. And it was very interesting how he decided that he was going to troll American Jews. Basically, by saying that if you don't vote for me, you're dishonoring your Jewry. Do so much for Israel. And if you don't vote for me, then you don't love Israel. Wow. I've never seen somebody be that kind of creatively divisive. And I don't know if it's a complete function of his so-called 5D chess, which I question at times, or his utter hubris, or perhaps a little bit of both, because that's what we do, or that's what we get when we get that Sun-Uranus conjunction in Gemini. And I've said this before, one of the first things I said about Trump was that you can't trust him. You can't trust him. And I don't care if you're his most, and he's big into loyalty, I think on his terms. On his terms. He's not big into loyalty as, I think, a universal concept, because I think he'll pivot and turn on somebody in a heartbeat if he needs to. I mean, you saw him do that with people inside of his own cabinet. What did he do to his generals, right? He'll turn on people, and so I think that's part of the reason why you can't trust him. He's got that hyper Sun Uranus conjunction in Gemini. And at the very least, it's interesting and it keeps people on their toes. So now he's got Anthony Scaramucci coming after him, assembling an Avengers-like hit squad to take Trump out. They're going to have their own GOP candidate. Excuse me while I have a sip of my coffee. Mm, there we go. That was a good swig. Good morning swig. I was at a coffee place last week in town, and I generally don't go there, but I was there. I was actually doing a reading for somebody, very interesting dude from Houston, by the way. And so we met there, and I don't get fancy coffee drinks. It's not part of my Virgo nature. I got two shots of espresso and a dollop of foam. Now, it was interesting because none of the young women, and there are about four of them, I'd say probably about 19 and younger behind the counter, none of them knew what a dollop was. Dollop? What's a dollop? A dollop is a small scoop. I thought everybody, you have a dollop of sour cream on your potato, your baked potato. You have a dollop of foam on your espresso or cappuccino. So I went on to explain what a dollop is. You should have seen the looks I got. Oh boy. We don't need any of your mansplaining around here, around these parts, mister. And I was trying to be a little funny. The jokes were not going over well. But anyway, it spoke to me about vocabulary. There are certain words that are just going to go away because people don't use them anymore. Dollop is one of them. I could come up with probably a list of words very quickly if I spent some time on it, but there are words like boondoggle. That's another word. Kids do not use boondoggle. Boondoggle and dollop. They're words from another era and another time. Just like there are names that are going away. People are not naming their kids Peter. Right? Peter is a name that's Tom is a name that's going away. Believe it or not, Thomas is a name that's going away. We're going to see the names of the 20th century begin to evaporate. Yeah, you get the Jacobs and the Justins and the Joshuas. Those J words will always be around. Jacob, Justin, Joshua, Jalen, Jared. Jared, if you're one of Trump's people. He's got his own Jared. Anyway, it's interesting times. I was on Andrew Bartz's show last night. He's got some show that he's whipping up, and didn't know a lot about Andrew, and did some research on him. And he's comes from sort of the sovereign world, and it's a world that I know about. It's a world that I think is fraught with landmines. I know people that have gone that route and have been actually successful. I know that people have gone that route and it's blown up on them. It's one of those things where I think you have to be absolutely exact. I think you need to know the exact language. I mean, everything has to fit like a 1,500 piece jigsaw puzzle in order for the individual to remove themselves from the system. Anyway, that's not the only thing that Andrew does, but it was interesting. We got on there and we talked for about an hour and a half, and we talked about the election in 2020. And if I had the ability to fire up some images right now, I would show you this thing. I'd show you the chart for election night. Holy shit, it is not good. It is not. It's one of the worst charts I've seen. It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. There's one trine, Sun to Neptune. Other than that, it's squares and oppositions, and the worst one is Mars is in Aries on election night, squaring off against Pluto. Hello, that's a bad sign. Bad sign. Really bad sign. If Trump gets reelected, this country is going to be on fire, and it's going to be November 7th, 2020. That'll be the fire starter. That'll be the sizzling wick. November 7th, 2020. If he wins, I looked at the chart. It's bloody, absolutely bloody. It has purge elements all over the chart. Like the movie, right? That's what it feels like. Wow, that Mars Pluto square, Mars in Aries, not good. But there's also at that time, which is interesting, Venus is in Libra, so there's a Venus Mars opposition going on. So there's this polarization towards some kind of more coherent social order with Venus and Libra, and the much more dramatic, intense, visceral, immediate Mars in Aries. It's going to be a heavy day, no doubt. And we have an interesting path to get there, don't we, between now and then? We've got a major eclipse coming up on the 25th, 26th of December. Massive stellium in Capricorn. We've got the Sun, we've got the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. That's happening in January, February. The galactic center has been off the charts lately, pulsing like crazy. We've got solar flares. The magnetosphere is off the charts today. There's just a lot happening on those invisible levels, those imperceptible levels where we may be able to feel certain things, but certainly we can't see it. Sometimes we feel certain things by our energy, our output. Are we tired? Are we exhausted? Are we dragging? Are we having a difficult time sleeping at night? I mean, these are things that they're pretty real. They're pretty real aspects, pretty real conditions in our lives. And some of them, I think, are artificially stimulated and created, i.e., 5G, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The smart meters. Some of those things are definitely contributing to what's going on with us. But there's, in my estimation, kind of a galactic override. We're part of this a very intense kind of macrocosmic system. And this is where the so-called rulers of the world, this is where I think that they probably can't go. Like they've got limits. They think they don't have limits, but they have limits. And this is when how do I say this? The program, I wouldn't really call this a program per se, although I think parts of it are a program. I think parts of it are definitely a program. But it is when the override of the program begins to assert itself. And that's when they have issues. That's when things kind of go haywire. And I almost wonder, and I know that there are people who think that the Epstein thing was Trump getting back at his critics and the people that want him essentially eviscerated. He was getting back at them for all the Russia Gate stuff, the Russia conspiracy stuff. Just look back on that. It's just insane. It's just insane. It's ridiculous. I'm just blown away by the fact that they spent nearly 2 years, $35 million, and at the end of the day, we get some guy who can barely remember what he had for breakfast. Whether it's an act or not, doesn't really matter. That's what we get, right? Sometimes you just deal with what's on the surface. What's on the surface is that's what we got. We got a guy that doesn't know if he had scrambled or fried eggs that morning. It's such a travesty. And if I was Trump, I'd be pissed too. Would I go out of my way to take Jeffrey Epstein, one of their number one assets, out of circulation? Possibly. Possibly. But I also feel like it's kind of a bit of a system override in some ways. And maybe this is how the system works through certain individuals and certain people. And I think Trump is a very archetypal person. Now, apparently, he's King Solomon, according to himself and certain radio hosts who the Israel worship blows my mind. By the way, it blows my mind. That's the one thing I think Taleb and Ilhan Omar are basically right on. I think they're right on it. Other than that, I think they're nuts about everything else. But it's the one country that doesn't have. It's like you can't question it. There's no way. Oh, you can't question. It's like there's this kind of very sanctimonious shroud that's been pulled over Israel, and you can't talk ill about Israel or how they treat people or what their involvement is in global espionage programs and their deep, deep, deep involvement in this government through APAC. You can't talk about that stuff because once you do, you're automatically branded an anti-Semite, and I think it's a bunch of bullshit. To be honest with you, I think it's total BS. But Trump is having fun with it. He's clearly having fun with it. He's got Mars in his first house now in Virgo, and I think he's going to be on a bit of a tear. And especially if he feels like there's going to be more levels of disloyalty, which apparently now Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch, is displaying by putting together the super team that's going to take down Trump. We'll look back in these times and we'll shake our heads just like I did. We'll just shake our heads. Because one of the things, this is what I was talking about last night with Andrew, was the fact that everything now is just resembling a Saturday morning cartoon. I mean, it's not even really feeling like reality or whatever reality was passing for before. It's like I mean, you can see it in all these different areas of our existence. You know, I mean, look at the Epstein thing. I mean, you could have just set your watch by what happened. I mean, people say, "Oh, Robert, you called it." Yeah, me and about 5 million other people called it. I mean, that was not that hard. There's no way that guy was ever going to get in front of a judge and a jury and spill the beans. There's just no way. They were either going to take him out or they were going to extract him. And that's what they did. They did both. They took him out, apparently, on the surface, and they extracted him. He's out of there. He's now returned to the state of deep cover is what he's in now. You've heard of the deep state. He's in deep cover now. But it was so surreal because we all knew what was going to take place. We sit back and go, right? Like I can tell you right now, there's probably a pretty good chance we might have a false flag tomorrow or a psyop tomorrow. And by the way, kids are back in school, so you better keep your eyes on schools. There'll be a very, very, but the school thing is difficult to pull off. I mean, they could do it in Parkland because of Scott Israel and his clowns, his group of clown thugs. They were able to actually pull that thing off. But they can't do it at every school. But kids are back in school now, and we know how much they just love to care about the kids and the guns. So keep your eye. But you see where I'm going with this? It's like we're sitting around going, okay, well, how it's going to be False Flag Friday tomorrow. I mean, it's beginning to look like just a Saturday morning cartoon. And so Andrew and I were talking about this last night. He was saying it's the Three Stooges. And he says, well, what comes on after the Three Stooges? Well, I said, it's obvious. It's Scooby-Doo. So we're living in a kind of a Scooby-Doo reality. And even with Scooby-Doo, right, there's that always that reveal at the end. And the reveal at the end is they'll have the mask. And it'll be like a fake monster or a fake bad guy, and they'll pull the mask off, and it's somebody that they know, and somebody who presented themselves earlier on in the episode or in the cartoon, who was a quote unquote kind of traumatizing, to be honest with you. Because let's say you're watching Scooby Doo, and there's somebody inside the cartoon, and it's like, oh, you know, this is kind of where reality is. And now I'm a Jewish and you're not voting for me. Shame on you. How can you not support Israel? Look at all I've done for Israel. To Never felt that. Interesting question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he has. I'm not sure he has time for when you're running fire. I don't think you have. That's my 2 cents. Um, so we're living in surreality. Surreality. We're living in a Saturday morning cartoon now. Everything is just getting so like even with that. I was noticing this with the NFL. Antonio Brown is an interesting character. He runs around with a Baphomet ring, a finger. He's been initiated. Antonio Brown's been initiated. He's an agent of chaos. And he masterminded his way out of Pittsburgh by basically pouting and doing all sorts of insane shit. They eventually traded him to the Raiders. So one of the things that happened to him was that he uh, supposedly burned his feet because of his, how do I say this? His stupidity by not wearing socks in a cryo spot. I'm not sure about that. I am not sure about that. First of all, I'm sure it's not the first time that he's done a cryo spot. Apparently, he did it in France. Secondly, if you've ever been in a cryo spot, they are very, very thorough about, and I've done it. I've done a cryo spot at least a dozen times. They will not let you in that chamber without socks in your feet because they could be liable for it. I'm wondering if something else happened to him. That's his excuse. I saw pictures of his feet and they looked horrible. Like he walked over coals, maybe. That's probably what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it went in, went in the other direction. He burned his feet. And he burned his feet with heat and not freezing cold. Anyway, so he shows pictures of his feet and he says, "Look, my feet have had a circumcision." It's like, you got to be fucking kidding me. My feet have had a circumcision. You know, the feet are, in Pisces, are representative of the soul. Put that together with the Baphomet ring, and I think we're starting to get a clear picture of what's going on with Mr. Antonio Brown. And then he goes off into this weird tangent about his helmet. I mean, the what he's been doing has just been absolutely insane. It's been nuts. Like everybody in the NFL is supposed to be wearing a group of specified helmets because they've had the CTE stuff. And he's wanting to wear a helmet that's 10 years old. Hasn't wore a helmet. He's worn the same helmet since college, essentially. Same style helmet. He won't change it. He's a cancer, number one. Cancers don't like to give things up. Cancers love their routines. That said, it's still nuts. And so we've got all these levels of surreality. Just life has just become. It's like I've been talking about how the simulation is starting to run out. Like the script is coming to an end. You look at Hollywood. What is Hollywood doing with their movies? They keep making the same movies over and over again. There's remakes, there's sequels. Bet the only thing new that they do is these intensely grotesque and traumatizing grindcore horror films. When we seem to get at least 3 of those per week, they have no problem pumping that shit out. When it comes to actually creating some interesting content that is artistic. Remember when all Hollywood used to be artistic? You remember when they tried to make great movies? I mean, of course, these were, Pluto and Leo sort of titans of the industry like Coppola and Lucas, and none of them are great on an individual level. We know the stories about Spielberg and Lucas. Coppola, not so much. He went through his Colonel Kurtz trip when he made Apocalypse Now. But there were giants. These people were giants, cinematic giants. John Milius, he wrote a lot of those scripts, did the Conan movie. The idea was to make great movies that were just culture changers. And what do we get now? We get superhero flicks. And with the superhero movies, those scripts have been written as well. They've been in the comics. They've already been written. You're just taking pages from the comics, putting them on the big screen. So even Hollywood has very little to offer because the simulation is ending. It's running out. How many dystopian nightmare survival movies and variations on that theme can we have? And what about love? Nary do we get a film anymore that's about true love, people exploring their emotional landscapes with one another in very intimate, often at times painful ways. We got plenty of that in the 70s and the 80s, and even to some extent in the 90s. We don't have those kinds of movies anymore. That's because the directors of those films, the screenwriters, the producers, they have a different agenda. They have a very, very different agenda. We're more inclined to have the remake of The Crying Game at this point than we are, say, The Way We Were. And I'm not a Way We Were fan. I just had to pull that out because that's one of those films that tugged at the heartstrings. But we don't get those movies anymore either. We just don't. By the way, what's the over-under of The Crying Game being redone? I think it's happening. Let me just look on. Let me just do a quick little search here. Let's see. You got The Crying Game, Crying Game, Crying Game. Watch The Crying Game. The Crying Game remake. The Crying Game came out in 1992. Let me just see if they have. Let me see what they have here. No, it doesn't look like they've got one coming yet. Just a lot of reviews for the original version of The Crying Game. Jay Davidson, Stephen Rea, Miranda Richardson, Forrest Whitaker, Adrian Dunbar, Jim Broadbent, Tony Slattery, the cast of The Crying Game. Yep, the scripts are running out, the simulation is coming to an end, and everything is taking on surreal proportions. If I said something just absolutely nuts and out of my head, said this actually happened, you might believe it. Right? You might believe it because we're entering into that kind of surreal twilight phase. And it's interesting, but it's not something that lends itself to hardcore resolutions of reality. I mean, I think that's part and parcel of the Jupiter-Neptune square that we've been going through and dealing with for quite a few months now. And one of the things that, again, I talked about with Andrew last night is like he says, well, is there a place or a phase where the actual real news, meaning the news that has some traction, might override the fake simulated corporate news model, i.e. fake news? And I said, yeah, I think sometime in video capture, where am I? Sometime in November. That's what I think. Sometime in November. All right, let me check in with you guys. Let's see where we are. See what you're doing. What's happening with you? What are your thoughts on the subject topic of the day? Let's see what we have here. Jews run it all. Jets, Joos, Trump included. Diana says Sabbatean, Frankist. There's Luann. Hi, Luann. Ani Brito, poorly written scripts and bad storytelling. I would agree. Groovy Bean. Hey, what's going on, Yvonne? Love emotions are removed from desensitized. Yes, I agree. Nice to see you, Yvonne. What's going on? I agree. I mean, even with our so-called love songs, we don't get love songs anymore. I mean, that's all part of the program, right? No matter where you are on the love song tip, we just don't get them anymore. What we get is we get some Cardi B shit, which is I'm gonna get mine. You left me. There's plenty of other big fish in the sea. I'm gonna get me a whale so you can go to hell. Shit like that, right? That's what it's come down to. It's when you listen to the lyrics of like Taylor Swift or Miley Cyrus or any of these young songstresses, it's always touting some kind of independence, and their greatest achievement is going to find somebody else to bang, right? That's their greatest achievement. And this is what our kids are being programmed by 24/7 in terms of the media. I'm really hoping that at some point that the kids of America, the kids of this planet, begin to reject the media that's being fed to them. And we actually talked about this last night over on Andrew's show, because the Pluto and Sag kids are the first kids that have been essentially from the moment they took their first breath, were immersed in media and immersed in computers and to a large degree social media. Uh, Pluto and Sag kids came along in 1996, right as the internet was being born. So by the time they're hitting 3 and 4 years old, we're talking around 2000, and that's when DSL lines were becoming ubiquitous, and the connectivity and speed of the internet was actually quite good. So by 4 and 5, they are online. You know, by the time they hit 6, 7, right? So by 2007, that's when the iPhone comes out. 2007, a lot of the Pluto and Sag kids are around 8, 9, 10. Okay, so they're playing theoretically with iPhones right around the age of 8, 9, 10. My kid got an iPhone when he was 11 years old. I didn't buy it for him, but he got one. So these are very, very different kids. They've grown up immersed in alternative media, and they're very adept at it. They're very adept at using it. They're very adept at finding things out and sorting through the noise. And at some point, I think they'll wind up rejecting a lot of the pop pablum media that has been put together for them. In which case, it's going to be curtains for the media companies. It already kind of is. It's like record companies; they're just almost non-existent. They have artists that they sign to contracts, and those contracts aren't just what they put out vis-a-vis the recordings. When you sign now with a record company, you sign everything away. I mean, you give it everything to them. You give your image, your likeness, your merch, everything. That's how you get your money. That's how the record companies now get their money. It's not just, hey, we're going to put out your CD because nobody buys CDs anymore, or we're gonna put your music out and we're gonna get a penny and a half for every play on Spotify. They're not going to make any money off of that. What they'll make money off of is everything associated with your likeness and your name. And that's where the game is now in the record companies. Other than that, they wouldn't be allowed to exist. They couldn't exist. There's nobody that really buys their product anymore. I haven't bought a piece of music in God knows how long. I mean, I got a ton of music already. I've got thousands of CDs and my computer's loaded with songs, so I don't really need to buy music. I've got plenty to listen to. I've got a lifetime worth of listening. I make my own music sometimes, right? So there's no market there, really. So it's not developing, it's not growing, and at some point, I think the youth are going to reject the media that's being given to them. Again, I'm going to reference my talk with Andrew last night. We were talking about Twitch, and that's an area that today's youth has really staked out. Nathan from Lift the Veil does his show over there on Twitch. And he does it because he's kind of an exile, although he does come back to YouTube every now and then because he knows that's where his number. That's his bread and butter. Is YouTube. He's Nathan's a little paranoid. I like him a lot. Don't get me wrong. He's a really, I think, intrepid and dedicated uh, podcaster, YouTuber, streamer, whatever you want to call him. I think he's very good at what he does. I think I lost somebody to Nathan, by the way. Remember Edgardo? He used to be in here. He doesn't show up anymore, but I've seen him in Nathan's chats. Edgardo, we miss you. Come back. Come back. I promise I'll say, see, on my show, I'll say your name. On Nathan's show, you have to pay him to say your name. I get it. Nathan needs the money. I get it. But on my show, you get free shout outs. Think about that, Edgardo. Um, but getting back to Twitch, these kids get on Twitch and they get 15,000 people watching them play a freaking video game, and they get paid for that. They get paid for that. There are people on Twitch who are making between $3,000 to $5,000 a day. I kid you not. I shit you not. They're making huge money because of the eyeballs and the ads that get popped while they're doing their online thing, and it's mind blowing. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I've tried to. I've tried to. I've tried to sit down and watch. There's this thing called the Overwatch League, and it's a league of professional gamers, and they have it on ESPN. And I sat there and I tried to watch this stuff. Like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, you have to be involved in that multiplayer game world, I think, to understand the chaos of that platform. You know, and I'm not. I don't do that. So no, not working for me. But it works for a number of people because it's a very successful model. But these are the kids that are going to be creating the new content. They're the ones that are going to shut off the mainstream media. They're the ones that are going to shut off a lot of the stuff that they just find to be empty or fake, or because the youth go through that. It's a very important kind of evolutionary phase and cycle when you're young. Jasper's asserting himself. Yes, Jasper. We all know you're there on the other side of the screen. He's the wizard. Jasper is the wizard, basically controlling everything from the other side of the screen. So I think they're going to shut it down, and I think they'll walk away from mainstream media if they haven't already. Because there's nothing compelling there, nothing compelling. I just read, speaking of the Gen Z kids, I just read that there was a school in San Francisco, of all places, that decided to take away their cell phones when they went to school that day. They took them away. And guess what? The kids loved it. Isn't that interesting? Here he is. Yes, I know. You've got to get one more moment in before goodbye, people. I know. For president, Jasper 2020. Well, why did they respond so positively to the cell phones being taken away? You would think that they would go through paroxysms of withdrawal, right? And that's not the case. My theory is that they were relieved of the burden to have to keep up. That's what I think. I think they were relieved of the burden of having to keep up. To chat, to text, to emoji up, to whatever they do, throw the filters on. I think that gets ultimately tiring. And somebody made a decision where they didn't have to do that. I think they were very happy because of that. And I think it's imperative. I think schools should take away cell phones at the beginning of the day. I think it's imperative. I think every school in the country. I think the one great thing that Trump could do is make that a law that every single school in the country would have to have a place for the kids and their cell phones at the beginning of the day, and they get them at the end. I know it was kind of wacky, but about a year and a half ago, I did a program on teachers who have affairs with their kids. 90% of the time they were women, by the way. Now I wouldn't be saying 90, probably about 70, but 70% of the time they were women. There were men involved, but mostly women. And one of the threads that ran through all those affairs is the cell phone. The cell phone was used to communicate directly with the students, pass pictures back and forth. And if you go back, kids had affairs with their teachers. It's been going on for a very long time, right? Since Peter of Abelard had an affair with one of his students and got castrated for it. Anyway, um, they've been going on for a long time. But the proclivity of the affairs and the exchange of information has really ramped up because of the cell phone. I mean, if you're a teacher, and I talked about this, if you're a teacher and you wanted to, let's say, give your student naked pictures, you'd have to get them developed, right? But that unless you had a Polaroid, which you could, if you were that committed, you could go run out and get a Polaroid and you know do some booby shots or whatever, D pics if you're a dude. I don't know, but I mean, those are very incriminating in a lot of ways. But the cell phone, it makes it somehow what, private? It's not private at all. But it's facilitated this kind of, in my estimation, the ramp up. Now, by taking away the cell phone, would you cut down on uh, affairs between teachers and their students? I don't know. Maybe. Why don't we start taking the cell phones away to find out? I'm harsh.